I'm really keen to understand in terms of being a pro cyclist, like you mentioned at the start, the financial demands of sort of the motocross that you're doing. Is that right? Yeah, is that right?
Yeah, karting, yeah.
Like karting. How does that compare in terms of going into being a pro cyclist, and sort of how do you start with, is it financed by yourself, amateur, or are you sort of looking for contracts all the time to, train with teams and be part of a team and stuff?
It depends really, and it has changed a lot the way riders are funded compared to like when I first started. Salaries have changed and the geography has changed quite a lot as well. I mean, I'm kind of reluctant to use the word, for me, a professional cyclist, because for me, a pro is when you're in the top two divisions. I wouldn't say Continental is pro necessarily. There are guys that are paid good salaries at Conti level, but there are also guys that are, get given shorts and a jersey, and that's it. And it's a gateway to do bigger races. So again, I financed a lot of it through guide work in Mallorca with Stuart Hall. So my winters, I go and guide and save up that money because I wasn't spending anything while I was training. And also some of the races out there were pretty profitable as well, because you could ride to them at €5-10 to enter with some decent prize money. But yeah, it's a pretty hard balance to get, because you do need support. You need people around you that are willing to support you. And cycling is not a quick sport either in terms of age. When you're like a footballer, for instance, if you're not at a certain level by 18, 19, you're probably not going to go particularly far. Whereas with cycling, there's such a big, so many things can happen when you get a little bit older. And I hit my best numbers last year, for instance, and I expect to continue to improve that way. So there is a financial element to it. I've kind of worked my way through with the sponsors and the supporters that I do have. I've tried to be as active as possible in providing them value. For instance, with Elite Wheels in the background, I'm giving feedback, I'm helping design the product. I'm not just like putting a few pictures on Instagram and saying thank you. I'm sort of actively getting involved. And I think that's why the people that have helped me with products and whatever have kind of stuck around for years, which is quite rare for personal sponsors. I don't, I don't accept a lot of free stuff for Instagram posts, for instance, because I think that undermines your integrity as an athlete and as a person. If you're willing to shill any product when you want to actually sell something good, people are just not going to believe you. So again, it's finding a balance in that sense. But the race in Poland was self-funded, so the riders had to pay. At UCI, the hotel is covered or should be covered by the race, and certain expenses are. But that UCI race in Poland cost about a third of the money of doing one round of the British National Series, including flights and everything else. So I knew what I'd rather do. And off the back of Turkey, I then got an offer to race in China, which was a proper professional race. That was a 2.8C, so one level below World Tour. That was a professional team in terms of how it was run, how the finances were run. And again, if someone said at the beginning of 2018, you're going to be in a race against half the Giro d'Italia, I would have said, nah, it's not possible. So that was a pretty cool experience to go over to Asia. And again, in Asia, they give you really good start money. They cover your flights up to about $1,500. You get decent start money. The prize fund for Hainan was over $300,000 which compared to European races is considerably more. I also did a 2.2, which is the lowest level UCI race, the same level as Turkey and Poland. And the prize fund for 3 days of racing was $110,000. It's the amount of money in Asia for racing is pretty good. So you can kind of get away, if you do a good enough job with the team and your team are honest, you can kind of make a living out of it. If Asia, you sort of be there. But obviously with the pandemic, it's China's off the cards, which has affected a lot of teams.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing sport in Asia now, isn't it? Cycling, it's come on a massive way, so but in terms of like you going up into cycling, how have you managed like your training? What's your sort of training been from, you getting back into the sport from karting, and then are we having that sort of guide from, obviously being in a team? Have you sort of mainly been managing your training yourself, or has you had some assistance? And how does that work in terms of how you progress to where you are now and sort of going forward?
So I've basically been self-coached through my whole time, and it's had its good points and bad points with it. I'm a lot less critical of myself now, which is good. One of the main things with a coach is, if you have a coach and they tell you take a day off if you feel bad, you take it off guilt-free. Whereas when you're self-coached, sometimes you can't get rid of the guilt. It's kind of always there. But I've learned a huge amount about training, and I've helped other people with their training. And there are certain people I will email or ask or speak to if I've got a question that I'm not sure about. And I'll try and get bits of information from as many different sources as possible. I'm really up to date, or I like to hope to be up to date with the latest training metrics and how things are measured, and sort of the modern, how you can use a power meter and heart rate to really maximize your potential and to kind of spot trends in your training. So I've become quite good at that. And
yeah,
I'm quite simple in that if you ask any one of my mates, I'm famous for doing long, stupid hours of riding, sort of back to back. And a lot of people call it junk miles, and it isn't. For some riders, it burns them out and they don't perform well at all. But for me, if I just did more zone 2 work, easy, I would get better at everything. Even my sprint would improve. So I kind of know that the basis of my training is just increasing that volume, and sort of taking it from there and making sure there's just enough intensity to keep those systems working. But if I do too much anaerobic stuff, too many hard, really aggressive short workouts, I actually lose quite a bit off my FTP, which is quite interesting. There are riders that are completely the opposite, that can get huge gains from training 10 hours a week, high intensity, and everything gets better. So it's hugely individual.